Look down at your hand right now. 5 fingers, a thumb that bends in toward your palm, nails that seem mostly decorative. You have seen that hand every day of your life. You have never once questioned it. But that hand is not finished, not even close. Your body is a construction site that never stopped. And most of what is being built, or quietly torn down, is happening without your knowledge, below the threshold of a single human lifetime. That is the part that should stop you cold. Evolution is not ancient history. It is happening right now, inside you. And the evidence is already visible if you know where to look. Here is where most people go wrong. They picture evolution as a slow, long-dead process, something that ended when humans built cities and stopped being prey. A completed project, a closed chapter. But that assumption is the exact opposite of how evolution works. Evolution never pauses. It cannot pause. It is not a story with a final page. It is a pressure that never stops applying itself to living things. And humans are still living things. Geneticist Mark Stoneking at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology has spent years studying the rate of ongoing human genetic change. His work, and the work of dozens of researchers like him, reveals something that rewires how you think about yourself. Natural selection is still actively reshaping human populations in real time. Not metaphorically, literally, right now. So what does that actually look like? Start with something you probably do every morning without thinking. You drink milk. If you are an adult living in Northern Europe or descended from people who raised cattle thousands of years ago, you can drink milk without getting sick. That might seem obvious, but it is not supposed to be possible. Every other mammal on Earth, every single one, loses the ability to digest lactose after infancy. The enzyme that breaks it down, called lactase, switches off. It is part of the normal mammalian program. You are an exception, and you only became an exception very recently. Around 10,000 years ago, certain human populations began domesticating cattle. For the first time in history, large quantities of milk were available after weaning. The individuals in those populations who happened to carry a random genetic mutation, one that kept lactase production switched on into adulthood, had access to more calories than everyone else. They survived harsh winters better. They outlived drought. They had more children. That mutation spread fast. Anthropologist Henry Harpending at the University of Utah estimated that this particular genetic change spread through certain European populations in as few as 400 generations. In evolutionary terms, that is instantaneous. In human terms, it happened between ancient history and last Tuesday. That mutation is now carried by roughly 35% of all living humans. It happened so fast that scientists call it one of the strongest examples of recent positive selection in the human genome. And it started just 10,000 years ago. Your ancient ancestors could not drink milk as adults. Your body can. That is evolution, inside you. Finished just moments ago, in geological time. But that is just one example. There are dozens more unfolding right now, and some of them are stranger. Your wisdom teeth are disappearing. Not in a metaphorical way. Some people are being born without them entirely. Roughly 35% of people today are missing at least one wisdom tooth from their genetic template. That number is climbing across generations. Your jaw has been slowly shrinking as the human diet shifted from raw, tough, fibrous food toward cooked, soft, processed calories. The jaw no longer needs the muscle mass or the bone density it once did. The teeth designed to fill that jaw are quietly being phased out. Not by surgery, by selection. The individuals who spend less energy building unnecessary teeth survive just as well, sometimes better, since impacted wisdom teeth used to be a death sentence from infection. Your children may have fewer teeth than you do. Your grandchildren fewer still. This is the part that should hit you somewhere deep. The body you were handed at birth is not the body your species will have in 5,000 years. Something is already being removed. Something else is quietly being amplified. Here is the direction this gets genuinely strange. Research published by Monica Carmen and her colleagues in 2015 mapped a dramatic genetic bottleneck in the human male population that occurred roughly 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. a period where the number of men passing on their genes dropped catastrophically, perhaps down to one man for every 17 women in the breeding population. Nobody knows exactly why. Some researchers point to warfare between patrilineal clans. Others suggest social structures that concentrated reproduction among dominant males. Whatever the cause, the genetic consequences are still visible in the male population today. That bottleneck shaped which Y chromosomes survived. It shaped which traits were amplified. The men alive today are, in a very real sense, the descendants of an extraordinarily narrow filter that closed shut just a few thousand years ago. You did not choose to come through that filter, but you did. Now look at what is still under active selection pressure today. Researchers at the University of Connecticut, including Stephen Stearns, spent years tracking a long-running health study of women in Framingham, Massachusetts. They were not looking for dramatic physical changes. They were looking for measurable statistical shifts in traits across generations. What they found was this: women in that population who were naturally slightly shorter, slightly heavier, and who had their first child at a younger age were having more surviving children than others. Those traits, height, weight, age of first reproduction, were shifting incrementally but measurably in that direction. Not because of culture, because of differential reproductive success. Because that is exactly what natural selection is. Evolution in a small Massachusetts town. Documented, published, unfolding between the decades covered by a single medical study. And there is something happening in your nervous system right now that researchers are only beginning to understand. The human brain is still changing. The ASPM gene, which regulates brain size during development, shows signs of recent and ongoing selection in populations across the globe. The microcephalin gene, which plays a role in brain growth, appears to have undergone a selective sweep as recently as 37,000 years ago, meaning a version that provided some advantage spread rapidly through the human population in what is, evolutionarily speaking, the blink of an eye. Researcher Bruce Lawn at the University of Chicago caused significant debate when he published data suggesting these genes were still under active positive selection at the time of his research. The debate continues. But the data that these genes have changed recently is not in dispute. Your brain is not the same object your ancestors carried 100,000 years ago, and it is not finished becoming whatever it is becoming. This raises a question that most people never think to ask. What are you optimized for? Not what you want to be optimized for. Not what you think you are. What are you actually built to do, given the selection pressures that have shaped the last 10,000 years of your lineage? You are built to survive infectious disease because the populations that survived plagues passed on resistance that you now carry. You are built to process certain foods your ancient ancestors never encountered. You are built with immune responses tuned to parasites that no longer exist in your environment, but once killed millions. You are, in many small and measurable ways, a solution to problems that have already been solved, and a test case for problems not yet fully named. And that is where it starts to feel personal. Because this is not just about genetics and data tables. This is about what it means to be inside a process that you cannot see, cannot vote on, cannot opt out of. You exist at a precise moment in a sequence that started 4 billion years ago and has no fixed endpoint. Every choice your ancestors made that affected their survival or reproduction contributed something to the version of you sitting here now. Every generation that comes after you will be shaped in some infinitesimal but real way by choices being made today. Not dramatic choices, ordinary ones. Who reproduces? Who survives? What environments reward? What environments punish? You are not the end of the story. You are a page in the middle of a book that has no last chapter. Here is what changes when you understand that. You stop thinking of your body as a finished object and start thinking of it as a process, a snapshot of something in motion. The ache in your lower back is not a design flaw. It is the record of a species that stood upright so recently that the spine has not fully adapted to vertical weight bearing. The anxiety that floods your chest in a stressful meeting is not weakness. It is an ancient threat detection system running software written for a predator-filled savanna, misfiring in a fluorescent-lit conference room. The cravings you feel for sugar and fat are not a failure of willpower. They are survival instructions from ancestors who never knew when the next meal was coming. None of these things are flaws. They are evidence. They are the fingerprints of a process that is still running. Look down at your hand again. The same hand you looked at in the first moment of this video. 5 fingers. A thumb. Nails you barely notice. That hand is not the end point of something. It is a waypoint. It is the shape your lineage has taken at this particular instant, shaped by everything that ever killed or spared your ancestors, everything they ever ate or failed to eat, every plague and famine and glacier and drought that pruned your family tree down to the exact line that produced you. And it is quietly, invisibly, continuously becoming something else. Something your descendants will look down at in 10,000 years and recognize as ancient. Your body is still evolving right now. It always was. You just never noticed.